everything on your own here. Like
Yes.
even if you buy a furniture, it comes in a box. You need to assemble it yourself. This is something which is very handy in India. Like you get help for everything. Like there's a plumber, there's a house help, there's like all kinds of people who help you to make your life easy.
Guys, welcome back to Entrance and Beyond. This is the second episode of 2025. I have Sudesh Pawar with me today, and this is an episode that is a part of the Masters series. So, we're going to talk a bit about Masters in the US. So, if I give an introduction about Sudesh, currently he works as a backend engineer at Amazon in Seattle, in the United States. Before that, he has done his Masters from University of Florida. As you can see, he's wearing a sweatshirt of University of Florida. It's really popular for their football culture. Tim Tebow, Cam Newton, if you're aware about these folks, and yeah, it's a great place to be in the US. Its ranking is around in the top 50 according to the US ranking system. So he comes from India. So yeah, he comes from Pune. He did his engineering here. He did his 4 years of engineering in India from like a normal tier 2 tier 3 college. I wouldn't call it tier 3 college. It was like tier 2 tier 3 typical college, and then yeah, he went to the US, and currently he's in the US, and he's doing a good job at Amazon. So just before we start, Sudesh, from your end, who is Sudesh Pawar?
So yeah, like you pretty much covered all my, work and academic qualifications. So outside of work, like if you want to know more, I like to play video games, read fiction books, and since it's US and like I also like to travel a lot, so that's another factor. Like we have national parks and all this stuff, so it's really good. Like I can travel a lot, which is like my secondary hobby. Main hobby is like reading books and stuff. So like yeah, that's like mostly outside the academic and professional life, which you already covered.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So, Sudhir, I'd like to talk about your life back in India. Like, how was your upbringing initially? How are you as a student? How are you as a person? What were your ambitions as a child before grade 10, 12, and before you get into this complex sort of educational parts,
Mhm.
things with you?
So like there are some fun facts in this part. So my schooling was pretty normal. Like I came from a state board school, nothing fancy like ICSE or anything. And the best part is like in my school they had this program like outreach program for computer literacy. So I was introduced to computers in fifth. And the
Okay.
fun part is when like I had a computer at home even before that, but I didn't really go into the programming side of it. So when they had a aptitude test, like I scored really low in my first computer exam, which was in fifth standard. And then it's like Indian mindset, like I need to get better at this. How can I get low in this? Because academically I was good. I was in like higher 80s or lower 90s, like in percentage wise, because we had percentage system back
Ah,
then, and we used to fail when
yes.
in my childhood. Recently, they've stopped failing, I know. But yeah, so that was there. Ki, if, you will get failed and you will have to stay back. Your friends will go to next grade. So there was always like competitive mindset in terms of academics. But then I got low in computers. So that's how I got introduced to computers. And then we had this remedial classes in weekends, which soon turned into like I started getting really good by sixth or seventh. So they started giving me the mentor role, like teach fifth standard students what you learned. Like, so I got exposed to programming pretty early, but I never did like this algorithm kind of things. It was mostly just e-files and like simple like school level programming.
Yeah.
And due to this, like I got so hooked to programming, so I skipped some of my seventh standard classes. Like I used to bunk them, and that's like a very fun part. So that's how like this was like pre 10th. And since you also asked about post 10th, so after 10th I joined a typical like Pune junior college, where we don't have this culture of really attending much. Like I had like the minimum required attendance which is required for giving the exams, and
Mm.
other than that I joined the JE coaching. Like it's a very traditional,
Mm.
before entrance it's pretty traditional. Like since I did good in academics, so they pushed me into like the teachers in my school said you can try for JE and stuff. So I joined a JE coaching, and then even my JE marks were going well, but then I missed the JE advanced cutoff, like CRL as they call it, by 8 marks. So I had to go resort to my state entrance, which is CET, and then I got to Wadia College of Engineering through CET, which is like as you told earlier, it's like a decent college in my city, but on the national spectrum, it's more towards tier three. So that's yeah.
Okay. So it was
Mhm.
like a normal student in school, and you mentioned that you got a hold of computers quite early, and then the Indian
Yeah.
mentality, as you mentioned, ki, like I didn't score too well, so I wanted to improve on that.
Get yeah, and then I found my passion, like like hey,
Yeah.
this seems fun. Like I don't know why I was so bad at it initially, so
Yeah.
like now I want to make a career in this. Like so that's my first part. So you also wanted to know how I turned into like to be inclined towards masters, right?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I just wanted to mention this
Like,
sounds like Kobe Bryant story because I had recently heard him on some interview or something and mentioned that in the first game he played in the United States as a kid, he scored 0 points. So that's
okay,
sort of like that's probably on the worse side of the spectrum. But as you mentioned, like you didn't really get really good marks in that, so that really shows.
first, yeah,
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 and the bunking thing was also something that is quite a fun fact
funny,
because
yeah, like it's a fun fact.
podcast, the person I talked with was like a typical, like she wasn't a topper initially, but then she's also doing good in her journey thus far. So yeah, as you mentioned, yeah, we'd like to know about masters. And before going into masters, when did you get this idea? Ki, like, there's something called masters, and what are the benefits?
Okay,
Like, yeah,
yes. So, like when I was in high school, like 11th, like I realized that I want to do JE because it's like it has very like IITs have really good computer science programs, so it's a good traditional pathway, like what most of the Indians are forced into. But I genuinely wanted to do it, so that's there. But then one of my, like in the area I lived, one of the what do you call like seniors or like bayas as we call them, he applied like through the GRE pathway and he went to US, and it became a news in like society that he's going to US. It was a big thing because when you come to like this is like 2016ish, so at that time it was not as prevalent as it is today.
yeah,
Few people used to go, but mostly from affluent societies, like from not from middle class people like that, because
yeah,
it was a hefty loan. Even it today it's a hefty loan, but let's discuss that later. So that was there. Then I came to know about like okay, even normal people can take loans and go. Like it's not just for the rich people or something. So that's there. Then I started researching more about it. I talked to my parents about it, and my parents said that yeah, you can go. Like go, it's not a big issue. Like since you're academically good, we think that you would be okay with it, but we don't know anything about it, and you can ask that bhaiya if you can reach him out some way. So that was there, but then I found out more like because Geo just happened around 2016ish.
yeah,
So yeah, so internet was like something at every person's in phone. So it was like mostly self research, and then I found out about these consultancies which help in going abroad. But I refrained from joining them because I found that like from reviews that most of the things you can do on your own, like GRE preparation, everything. So then yeah, that's like first I was exposed to, and then I was thinking that let's do it like first focus on entrance because I shouldn't be doing two things. Like I
yeah,
found out about stat, but it was too late by then, and
yeah.
I was like, okay, let's not do undergrad. Let's go for grad itself. That would be more sensible decision, which we can cover later in the podcast. Why how I came to that decision. So that was my first exposure to US MS culture.
Okay. So the thing is that typically what folks do is that they do BTech, and then there are a lot of people that are in for placements, and then there's some that really go for masters. And the thing is, masters and placements, I would say, are totally different ball game. Looking from the angle of extracurriculars and things like that, right? Because to get placements, they don't really look too much into your extracurricular activities as long as you have the required skills and you're matching the sort of candidate they need. So it's a totally different ball game, right? So could you just
Hmm.
explain the application process of it? And what are some of the differences between a placement, going for a placement and going for masters? What are some of the things that are extra that you have to showcase when you're applying for masters that you wouldn't if you're just going for your typical placement?
Okay. So the way I would like to cover it, let's cover the common parts. The common parts are like you need projects in both of them. Even for getting shortlisted in a company, you need good projects, and even for getting professors or admission committees attention for your masters, you need good projects. So that's like the common part. And even the curriculars, like most companies in India have this GPA cutoffs, and again, like most colleges in US consider GPA. It's not like the only factor. So these are the common factors, like GPA and good projects. Now coming to different factors, in for your masters, your DSA skills, your development skills are not considered at all. You can most like few people do that. They can just like you follow some YouTube tutorial and make the projects and just put it on the resume, which they give to the admission packet in masters. And similarly for placements, like people follow YouTube and just go for it, but that's not how that's like differences. Like you can't showcase your DSA skills in your admission packet which you when you apply to a college. You can't showcase that. For placements, however, there's OA, which is called online assessment,
Yeah.
so you have to showcase your DSA skills. So difference would be DSA for placements and development skills for placement, like knowing your tech stack. Whereas for masters, you need to focus on extracurriculars such as like publishing paper if you're applying for research-based degrees. Like MS is a research-based degree, and there's something called as MEng or a Masters of Engineering, or like MS non-thesis also. Some in some colleges call it like different names. These are professional-based degrees. So for professional-based degrees, you either need some good projects, and you need to prove that you want to follow a professional track in masters, and a substitute for that is like corporate work experience. So if you're coming after some work ex, maybe a professional degree is better for you. And the disadvantage of applying to professional degrees, like they don't get scholarships and RAs. It's fully self-funded. Whereas for MS, your professor can fund you if they really like your profile. That's the difference between the applications for two types of master's degree abroad.
Okay. So
Mhm.
basically, you mentioned that you have to give some exams and then you have the application process. So could you describe exactly, like, because there are a lot of things that people don't know. They just hear about TOEFL, GRE, and then they know you have
Okay.
to submit some sort of proof of work. You need some
Okay.
recommendations. So could you just
Mhm.
sort of streamline that, and just so that people don't have any further doubts in how exactly can you land a master's in the US?
Sure, sure. So, like this is like TOEFL and IELTS are the two options. Now, recently they've tried something called as Duolingo English test as well, which is not widely accepted. So, I would ask more of subscribers or viewers to skip Duolingo English because it's not really widely accepted in US universities. So, I can talk about US as well as Canada because both have very similar. So, GR is optional in Canada. It's more recommended for US colleges, but even in US colleges, a lot of colleges are shifting away from GRE. So you should research when individual college, like if they require GRE or not. So most of the engineering degrees do require GRE, even like in today's world, even after post-COVID. And TOEFL or IELTS is compulsory for people applying from India because India, like English is not one of our, a very what is a native language. So when you don't speak, like if you're applying from UK to US, you don't need TOEFL or IELTS. But when you apply from India, you need it because they considered like your English skills should be tested before letting you in US. So TOEFL or IELTS, you can choose either one of them. Like it's up to an individual. Like IELTS has a different like 9 band score. TOEFL, last I know, it was like out of 120. Okay, and there are four sections: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So most of the Indians score a little less on the speaking side because they don't really, since it's a computer-based exam, the computers can't really get your thoughts across. So that's their sort of. If I personal bias, if you ask me, I prefer TOEFL because it's more commonly accepted in US. IELTS is more towards like if you want to apply both to Canada and US, then I would recommend going for IELTS. And coming to GRE is like 300 now. During my time, it was 340. Now it's scaled down to 300. So out of that, like half of the marks are like for quant section, which is like mathematics,
Yeah.
like basic mathematics, something like CAT, or people in India might be familiar with CAT or any aptitude exam. And for English section, again, it's mostly like reading comprehension essays and answering questions on that, and then filling the blanks with grammatical sentences and grammar stuff. Like that's the verbal part of it, content verbal. And there's an additional section called as essay writing, which is
Yeah.
like AWA, academic writing analysis. So that's scored out of 6. And I guess around 3.5 is a decent score. If you are targeting top 20, then maybe 4.5 you should try for that. And contest, like sticking to CS and like mechanical or engineering degrees, you need to score above 160 in cont, or else you won't really be considered in the like. They have like, even though it's a holistic admission process, you still need to be good in cont because that's a deal breaker for universities.
Okay. Okay. So these were the exams. And is there anything you want to mention about the application process? Is there something that someone needs, because there are a lot of factors in that, right? You need recommendation letters and things like that. So you could.
Yes. Okay.
Well,
Yeah. So like recommendation letters, mostly you need three of them. If you have any corporate experience, one of them should be coming from your someone from your company because that increases the credibility of the experience you put on your application. So if you don't, like, let's stick to just people applying straight out of colleges, you need three of them. One of them should come from someone senior like principal or HOD or someone of that sort. One of them should come from someone like both of them should actually come from the other two should come from the faculties which know you really well, or like your internship manager if you have done an internship. That's a good like substitute for a faculty, because like if you're doing internships you can't really have good bonds with your faculties because 6 months you are out of the college, like, so I assume that having an internship manager, like they know you better than your faculty, so better to take it from an internship manager, because your LORs matter a lot in US. Uh, your LOR should cover, that your strengths, weaknesses. If it's all strengths, that's I would say yellow flag, not a red flag, because it seems that you have written it.
Yeah,
And it's a culture in India. I'll be very honest. Like, I don't know about IITs, I can't comment on them, but in like normal colleges, like tier three, tier two colleges, faculties are not really into writing LORs. They just ask you to write, and you can't replace a faculty's writing, because you would write all good things about you. LOR should also cover some scope of improvement. It shouldn't be shown as like weaknesses. It should be like he's doing something, or she's doing something, but they can do better in this particular areas. If they should, this should be in your LOR. If it is not there, then the LOR is not considered that seriously, because it comes across that you have written it,
yeah,
not your faculty. And as a SOP should cover, purpose of pursuing that particular degree, and you should have a degree in mind, like even if you're doing CS, you should have a specialization in mind. Like for me, it was like exploring intersection of NLP and backend, because I had backend experience in India, and like I've never been like the design kind of guy, so front end was not really for me. But I'm a full stack person now, but when I applied to masters, I was purely like NLP backend. I want to explore the intersection of it, like so areas like natural language processing. Then there's like LLMs was not a thing when I applied, so I didn't write LLMs in my SOP. But now someone can write that if they are really into it. So that's the, you should have a, you can't just say that I want to go into masters in computer science. That's not a good SOP. You should have a sub area of your computer science which you want to explore. It shouldn't be too niche, or they would like, let's say that why don't you apply to data science itself if it's just like data science. Or like if it's your area is data science, then apply to data science degrees instead of applying to CS degrees, because you won't be taken seriously in that case.
yeah,
So yeah, and get your SOPs reviewed by people who are in US already. Or if this all is sounding too complex, you can join a consultancy. It's like they can streamline it for you. But personally, like if you want to save money, like they don't do anything different. They just do whatever is available on internet, and they just make it easy for you. If you don't have time, you can join one.
yeah. They sort of work at agents, right? Like what we have typical agents where they'll just help streamline the process. But as you
Yeah,
mentioned, not some rocket science, and now there's
yeah,
so many folks on
yes.
LinkedIn you can reach out to and get a real idea key how
Yeah.
exactly you want to do that. So something Sudesh mentioned was that the LRO, that is like the letters of recommendation, should be actually created by a teacher or someone that's actually knows you. It shouldn't be like you're just writing all your good things, because they're looking for someone that is actually good, right? So they want to hear from a third person's perspective. Ki, how is this person? And they want to see if they can really come to the US and do something that would be really good for their country and for themselves professionally. And he mentioned that he's also was in NLP, and backend was sort of the niche area that he chose, and that is something important. If you should have an idea of the kind of specialization you really want to uh, do in your masters, just so that they get a clear understanding. And it basically shouldn't be something that's really generic. It should be specific, relating to you. And as you mentioned, you can follow all the points that he mentioned. Now, the folks have got an idea of the entire application process, and something that's important in the application process is deciding the colleges you want to apply for, because everyone has some academic limits, and they personally should have an idea ki what colleges am I best suited for. So, what are some factors that people should keep in the back of their mind when selecting the colleges they want to apply to, and what are some of the things that you kept in mind when you were applying?
Okay. So one of the major factor for someone coming from India in current market is, I would say, first, obviously it has to be rankings, which we covered, like lightly touched upon in the initial part of the podcast. It has to be in like top 100, because in current like top 100 for your domain, like no, some a computer science top 100 college might not be a top 100 college in mechanical or something other, like some other domain. So you should check the rankings for your domain, not like just because the college is overall good. Like I can give an example, like Dartmouth, which is like a IV. It's the computer science course is average over there. It's not as good as like say some other non-IV college. So check the college for like your domain, and then costs, which are very important. A lot of people end up in like debt of 80 lakhs, 1 crore after like graduation, and they don't get jobs because the college was good. It was private. It was good, but it was not in the areas where the IT is located or something of that sorts. So location and cost is like equivalent factors. So to summarize, I would say put your rankings first because it's very relevant in current market. And rankings cover all the quality stuff, like, because rankings are based on that. So if your ranking is good, it means the faculty quality and the alumni network is good. And for like cost and location, it's like similar. Like if it like you can have a balance factor like 50-50 weightage to both of the factors. So yeah.
Okay. And is there some fees associated with just applying, or is it free to apply anywhere?
That depends on university to university. If like it's paid everywhere, but few universities give application fee waivers if you mail them and tell them that I need an application fee waiver.
Okay. So that could
Hmm.
also be a factor. Like just looking at what your capabilities are, you should also keep that in mind because, as Sudesh had mentioned, that the fees depend on university, and it's in dollars anyways, right? So it's a minimum. Its minimum would
Yeah.
also be a decent amount for a lot of folks. So these are the factors that you should keep in mind when you are applying. So Sudesh, you coming from India, you went to the US for the first time. So how did you like it culturally, and what are some of the things that you really liked about the culture around there, and you think everyone should learn from?
Okay, so the culture part is like one of the like non-academic part is like people say sorry and thank you for everything. Yeah, like they're very polite and like that's the culture. Like a simple gestures, like they hold the door when you are, coming in. Like if you're behind someone and like if they go in, they just hold the door for you. Like these are all small things like which Indians can really pick up on, like be more polite and like is India, everyone is in hurry, so they don't really care about the small things. And other than that, like even in like public transport, like there are sections reserved for what do you say, senior citizens and handicap. So if people like there's no one of that category in the bus, people are allowed to use those sections. But whenever someone comes, they openly offer them the seat. Like these are some of the things which small things which Indians can really pick up on. Other than that, culturally, it's like more open culture, you can say. Like it's more flexible. If someone wants to keep to themselves, it's okay in US. Like again, if someone wants to explore a lot, like go to parties, go to hiking, that's also acceptable in US. So US is more diverse, I would say, compared to India in terms of culture. Like even India, it depends. Like big cities, like it is becoming more like US culture these days, but
Yeah.
others need to still pick up on that.
Yeah, so like the small things are really important because apart from that, I think everywhere, even in India now, it's quite developed. But the small things
Yes.
that you mentioned, like for disabled people, or just the small gestures, there, yeah,
Yes.
since they're strangers, right? It feels good, and especially when you come from India and like you're sort of trying to get a hold of things, ki how do things
Hmm.
work over here. So
Yes.
generally, when we look from an Indian perspective, we think that everything is good in the US. Like personally, as someone going to the US, people from the outside think that ki, like everything is good down there. But personally, there are a lot of struggles that you must have faced, and a lot of people that go to any other country, or even folks that go to other states, they face some sort of struggles and difficulties. So, do you want to
Okay.
shed light upon the struggles that you think are a lot of times they're hidden from the mainstream media or hidden from a lot of people that they don't really think happen in the US as a student there?
Mostly it's like in some cities, like some major cities, there's like the rising costs have increased. So there are like, what do you say, people who are struggling, like the locals. So there could be like it's a very isolated thing. Not
Yeah.
everyone faces this, but in few major cities there might be few bad actors who might be very racist towards you. It's
Oh,
not a very common thing. It's like another thing is like you might have heard like recently about the wildfires and all this.
yeah.
So the thing is, like, there are a lot of companies which don't cover internationals insurance wise. So that is like something people need to really explore. It's like sometimes you might end up in a bad insurance. So like that's not something a red flag or something. It's just like something you need to be cautious about. And major things which where many Instagram reels also cover up on, like you need to do everything on your own here. Like
Yeah.
even if you buy a furniture, it comes in a box. You need to assemble it yourself. This is something which is very handy in India. Like you get help for everything. Like
Yeah.
there's a plumber, there's a house help, there's like all kinds of people who help you to make your life easy. In
Yeah.
US, it's not like that. Everyone's respected, and even if you like, they earn almost the same as you. So like if you want to get help, you will have to pay a lot, like, or start learning on doing yourself. Like even small things, like if
Yes.
you have a car, changing the engine oil and all that, you can't go to mechanic here, you need to do it yourself. And for other things like cooking, yeah, there is one major tip I have, like anyone who comes for masters needs to learn cooking, or else you would suffer a lot, or at least get a very good roommate who can cook in case you don't want to really cook. But then again, after 2 years they'll go to some other place, and then it's better to learn cooking anyways.
And
So
it's
yeah.
probably really hard to get such a roommate because you're looking for a
Yeah,
not a chef.
yeah, exactly. And like, why would they do it? Like, they have
Yeah,
to cook for two people then. So even like considering their
yeah,
mindset, like, yeah, you should learn cooking.
yeah. And the assembly thing, I personally also seen like even if you have to get a sofa, you can't just call a carpenter who'll make it, or you can directly transport it. If you do that, it's quite expensive, and the ones that come from Amazon, you have to literally construct it from nuts and bolts all the
Yep.
way up.
Yes.
And even groceries and things like that, because in India we have a habit, right? Because most places they have some sort of market nearby. Even if you're from a village, there's some sort of main market where you can just like walk and go, or go by using a bike. But in the US, you need basically it's cars, because bikes are really expensive and not a lot of people really use bikes
Mhm.
as compared
Yeah.
to India. So that's
Mhm.
an important thing you shed some light on. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to ask, Masters in 2025, is it worth it? And what happens with a lot of people is that when they're in their third or fourth year, they think, yes, we'll do masters. They're studying for it. And then the placement season comes around. And they're seeing like their friends are getting placed in good companies, decent companies. And it's hard to wait now, because as a human, you'd want to sort of go with what everyone's doing. It's really hard to stay patient and be like, no, I'm going to study 2 more years and then I'm going to go forward from there. So is it worth it? And did this ever happen with you where you were just like in sort of FOMO that you're missing out on placements, or due to the fact that you're doing masters? So could you shed some light upon that as well?
Yes, like, I mean, like, this is, there's a lot of questions, so I'll break it down and try
Yeah,
to answer it. So, firstly, 2025, I would say, if ever, if someone has already started applying and they've already applied, like, they, but for someone for 2025, they might have already done the application, because the
definitely.
application timeline, like, which we didn't cover earlier, it's like you need to apply by October, November if you want to get admission for next August, which is like the fall intake.
Yeah,
So someone who's applying for August 2025 has already applied. So if you've applied, it's like fine.
yeah,
If you are planning to apply, I would say wait a little bit. Let the new regime come. Let's see what the rules they have. Like, there are a lot of, visa, which we will touch upon later. But there are like a lot of visa rules. So I would say delay it. Not, I would say like, pause it. Not take. I'm not giving a stop on it yet. Let's see what the new rules are. Then you can decide whether you want to pursue it or not. Because I'm pretty sure that someone who's pursuing masters has a goal to make a career in US in future.
yeah,
In case you just want to go pursue a like research based degree and go back to India and like join as a professor or something like that, be you're very welcome to apply. Like, it's not relevant to you what I'm telling. Someone who wants to do a job in US after the masters, you need to be a little cautious. Like, if you like, I'm talking only about OPT, because talking about H1B is doesn't make really sense when you're just applying for masters.
yeah,
Masters is supposed to be for students, not for like H1B in mind. So
yeah,
that's a different thing. Other than that, about the placement factor, yes, it did happen. Like, one of my very close like project partner, like the in engineering we have this final project, right? So he did go get placed in a service based company, but within like 6 months he got another offer in a product based company, which is like paying really well. And I was like, you know I'm going to get a start with a negative with a loan, and this guy is going to get like earn in six figures, higher six figures, like 20, 18, 20 lakhs, which is a very good salary in India, to be honest, as a fresher. So yeah, that it did happen. Like, maybe I started doubting a little bit, like, even though it was my goal since first year to go for an MS, first year of engineering, but still, I still started doubting my decision, that maybe am I really doing the right thing or not. So it does happen, but since it was my goal, I stuck to it, because I was like, whatever it is, we will work hard, we will do whatever it's like, whatever the challenges are, we will try to repay this loan as fast as possible. And I just stopped thinking about it. So if your goal is masters, stop thinking about what your friends are doing, and like if they're getting a start, and like is but if you are dicey about the things, I would say give it a try. maybe work for a year or two and see. Like I would say, like working for a year doesn't really make sense. I know I did that, but that was due to factors like COVID, because I didn't want to do a master's in COVID, because since you are paying like this huge amounts, you are paying for the campus, so you need to do your master's from the campus. If you're going to attend Zoom lectures, there is no point in paying like whatever, like 20, 30, 40, whatever lakhs it is in INR. So it doesn't make any sense. So if you're getting an online course, no, online masters is only recommended if it's like helping your career goals in some way, like your manager recommends it for a promotion or something. Other than that, take a campus masters. The main USP of a US college is the campus and the culture at the campus. So if you're not getting that, there's no point in doing a master's, I would say, because that helps you grow, is what I feel.
Correct. So, what are the pros and cons? Because you mentioned that if you're someone that doesn't want to specifically work in the US, you just want to do a master there, and then there's PhD options and things like that. For someone like that, you said it's a good option. But if you're someone who's a normal student doing BTech, there are some other
Mhm.
factors that you have to have in mind before going to the US, because you have to think about your life after the masters, right? Because masters is
Yes.
a 2 year course, and then after that, things
Yeah.
depend on the market at times. Like during the
Mhm.
it's really hard to stay there.
Uh, you should like, it's a pros is basically you can touch upon a sub area of your like desired major. Like if it's like, I can talk about, let's say, CS example, because I have done CS, but I can also talk about examples as well. In CS there are areas like, compilers theory, compiler theory, or automata theory. Then there's something like NLP, which I touched upon earlier. Then there's like NLP is more of a linguistics and CS combination, but yeah, sure. Then there are other factors like cybersecurity is another major. So if these are like one, if you want to touch upon one of these sub areas in more depth, you need a master's to get into the niche roles. ML is another thing. There's this role called as ML engineer or MLE. For that, you need a specialization in ML, which you don't get after BTech. I know they've started in India AI/ML course, but that's not really specialization. It's just touching upon the basics. So you need a master's to get into MLE kind of roles. So for specific roles, a master's is highly recommended. Cons is basically, as you touched earlier, like if you're going to do something like a service based role, you don't need a master's for that. Like if you are going to join TCS, Infosys after your masters, like even in India, even in US, it's like irrelevant where you're joining. Like those roles don't really require niche skills, so you are just wasting 2 years of your work which can help you propel in your career. Like if you want to work in a normal role, just start working and get use those 2 years experience to explore more career choices. Like you have more idea of normal HDE roles really don't require masters unless you are doing a HDE role in a particular team which requires a knowledge of like some special areas. Only then masters make sense. Another cons is obviously cost. Irrespective, even in India, in private colleges, it costs around at least 8-10 lakhs on the minimum side and 20-30 on the upper side. Where the upper side of India ends, lower side of US starts. So 20-30 on the lower side and 1 crore, 2 crores on the, like I know someone who you spent around 1.5 crore for their masters. In again in INR terms, because US INR that keeps fluctuating. So this was like 2023, like because since I have graduated in 24, so, and they graduated in 24 as well, but they paid the fees in 23, like 6 months before that.
Okay.
So I'm talking about with the rate of 84, they spent on 1.5 CR for their masters. So it's a big decision. Choose wisely.
Yeah. And even if you get a placement in a small company, like for a lot of folks, they don't have some sort of backup, right? So it's just like their parents have retired or something. So things depend on them. And even if
Yes.
you aren't doing a master's, using your 2 years of experience, you can definitely grow and switch companies. And a lot of people actually do that. They
Yes.
start off with TCS and all these other sort of companies.
Yes. Yes.
They go up the ladder, or you can try a master's if you want to specialize. Or I think for tier three people, it would definitely be some sort of leverage.
Yeah.
As
And
IITians
yeah.
and folks that already have a network. Yes. What were you saying?
Yes, yeah, I was saying that if you're in tier three and like you have to take a loan like for the entire masters, if I would recommend working for a year or two. Like that work ex helps in US, like I have like I can talk about my batch, like not just my college, like throughout, like I have friends in other colleges as well, like any person who applies to US applies to at least 8-10 colleges, so you have friends in minimum 8-10 colleges whom you have applied together with. So I have friends in around 10-15 colleges, so all of them like had a similar outlook, that people with prior work ex got jobs faster in this market. Like this is like, you can call it a bear market in terms of jobs. It's not a bear market in terms of stocks, I know that, but there was like a lot of slack in job market in US. You might have heard it in India as well, that people are not getting jobs, they're coming back to India and all that kind of things. Even I, like, I'll be very honest, like even I didn't get a job for almost 3 months after my graduation. So yeah, there's this factor. But like, since came from a good college, I had a professor who gave me a research role for, like, you can, yeah, this is something which I, before I forget, I need to touch upon.
Yeah.
So if in your first year after graduation, you can do a research role or a volunteer role. You don't need to be paid. If you are like, have savings or something, if you can self-sustain, you can use that part time to learn more about your career choices and stuff. It's legal. It's nothing illegal or anything. Your US government allows that for students. And obviously, if you get a job, you can do that. That's a personal choice. Whatever you want to do. I researched for a couple of months because the market was really bad. I was not getting really good calls. I had couple of calls, but I decided like they were not sponsoring. Like, that's another part we will touch later in this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can talk about the sponsorship part as well, that you just mentioned.
Yeah, oh, sure. So sponsorship is like in current market, since there were a lot of organizational restructuring or layoffs, as they call in some companies, a lot of US citizens are available in the market. So rationally thinking of, like, any country would prioritize their own citizens. So if
Yes.
the citizens are available in the market, a lot of companies are not sponsoring because it's very hard to justify that when like there's a job in the house, someone in the house is unemployed. Why would they hire someone from outside the house for that job? It makes sense. So a lot of big companies require specialized skills which non-US citizens can bring to the role. So like a diverse perspective is one of them. Like, and like there are different things, like, some of the US citizens are not qualified for certain roles because they don't have a master's, nothing
Yes.
else. Like, that's the
Yes.
only reason. So yeah, few of the roles still do sponsor, but like getting sponsorship in current market is really hard compared to, let's say, 2022, which is like a good ballpark. Like, most people follow 2022, like just after COVID ended, that like these people got jobs. We will also go there. We will also get jobs. That's not the reality anymore. Like in 2022, every college person who was capable of cracking the interviews got a job. In 2024, or like now we're in 2025, I would say that you need to have a good network. You need to have a very big factor called luck, and then like cracking the interviews. Like, skills everyone has in current market. If you don't have, you develop them. That's not a very hard part. Luck is something you can't develop, and obviously your college alumni network matters a lot because referrals work a lot in this current
Yeah.
market, and for referrals you need a good alumni. So that's another factor you can look while applying to colleges. But a good rank college will have a good alumni. So a one-stop solution is applying to a good ranked and a decent location college. So yeah.
Okay. So sponsorship, you're talking about H1B visa, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yes, yes. A lot of companies, like, I'll give an overview picture. It would be very helpful for the viewers.
Yeah.
So after your masters, you get something called as OPT, which is like optional practical training. Yeah, it's optional practical training. It's optional. Okay, you don't really have to, do it, but it's practical training. So like basically job. It's just a fancy term for job. Or you can, like, for your first year, you can also do researchers, as I touched upon earlier. So this it is only for 1 year. And if you are doing a STEM designated degree, which is like a degree given by the USCIS, which is like the organization which looks after, immigration and stuff. So USCIS has designated some degrees as STEM. So for STEM degrees, there's a shortage in US. Like, a lot of citizens don't pursue STEM degrees. So for STEM people, they have given 2 year extension to this OPT, which is called STEM OPT.
Okay.
So you get 3 years. In these 3 years, you can work on the F1 visa itself, which is a student visa.
Yeah.
A lot of people work for these 3 years and they go back. So like that's something people do. So that's one factor. So you can put no in sponsorship for such cases, but then you'll have to explain in the HR why you're putting no, because HR would ask you, hey,
Yes.
you're not a US citizen, you said no to sponsorship. What's the reason exactly for that? And some companies might not like that because it's a very short-term goal. Like, you're just working for 3 years and then you're going to leave the company if it's not in India, or take an internal transfer. It depends. So putting a no is something a lot of seniors recommend, but it's not something a very good advice, because a company will reject you, man. Like, they know that, hey, this guy doesn't have a long-term vision. Why should we select him?
Yeah.
Or this girl, whatever. Like, not going being gender specific. So yeah, that's there. And then putting yes is, if you are requiring sponsorship, put yes. And after this, like after this OPT, like after 3 years, you need a visa to stay in US. So that is called what's H1B, which is like a worker visa, like temporary worker visa. For this, there is a lottery system. it's not based on like I'm in Amazon, I'll get the visa. Someone in like companies like service based companies won't get the visa. It's not like that. Everyone has an equal chance. It's a lottery based system. Your application is put in a pool, and they randomly pick out passport numbers. That's based on passport numbers. Like they changed it recently. Before that, it was a unique ID. So like one person can have more than one applications, which mathematically improve their chances. But
Yes.
that's removed now. Everyone has a one chance. So one person has only one application in the pool of like 85,000. So I'll touch upon this as well. So around 4 lakh, 5 lakh people apply in current market. Like I'm talking about the numbers from this year's lottery, like the one which happened in 2024.
Yes.
So this 85,000 is divided into two parts. 65,000 is general pool, which has applicants from India, other countries, like trying for an internal transfer to US company. Like you might have heard, like people work in somewhere in India and then they take an internal transfer.
Yes.
So these are the people. So they also apply to H1B pool. That's for 65,000. And there's a 20,000 pool which is exclusively for the master students. So that's another pros of doing a master's in US. Like you get an additional 20,000 H1B seats. So even like technically the basic maths, 85,000 of 4 lakhs is like 20% chance of getting the visa. And this is purely luck. It's not like you are going in like the top company. Like what's the top company? Let's say Nvidia right now due to stock price. You're in Nvidia and you'll get the visa. It's not like that. It's like equal chance to everyone, and it's purely luck based. So that's why I was saying luck is a big factor in current market as well. So based on this all statistics, I would recommend that be aware of this. I'm not denying like if you are ready to take these risks, then you can come to US, and like if you have a long term vision of staying here or like working here, whatever it is. But this is something not really a F1 student should really worry about. F1 students should focus only on their masters, and these are like future factors. Just have them in back of their mind, like in case you want to stay in US after your masters. But during a master, just focus on the degree and like what a degree that brings you. Like also look at if those degree helps you in India as well, like that degree, the knowledge you get gained from degree in case you need to go back, or some other country in case you don't want to go back. Depends. Yeah.
Okay, so that was pretty nicely explained, and people got a good idea due to the fact that you explained the breakdown, right? 65,000 and 20,000. And like you
Hmm.
mentioned, 65,000 was like the general lottery system for people from many countries, various countries, and people that are demanding for internal transfers. And the
Hmm.
remaining 3,000 is exclusively for people that
Master
have
student.
done masters. So that's another advantage that he mentioned. So you should also have this in the back of the mind because people must have heard in the news recently there's a huge debate that's going on. Elon Musk is involved and then Trump is involved. And since there's a change in administration, you should always have that in the back of your mind because after getting an H1B, you have to extend that and then in order to get a green card because a lot of people, if they're in the US for some time, they definitely want to get a green card. So you also should have a basic idea of how that system works just so that you don't get surprised. That's the
Yeah.
main thing. So yeah, I wanted to talk about Amazon now. So how exactly did you get the call from Amazon? And I won't really go into the process too much because we've covered that before in the podcast and it's almost the same. You can check out the process and all that online. So yeah, how did you get a call from Amazon and how was that experience?
Okay. So Amazon, I basically applied around June after my graduation with a referral from a senior from my college UF itself. So that's again where alumni network helps a lot. So Amazon was on a hiring freeze, which is very like most people must be aware of it. In US, I'm talking only about US. I don't know what if they're hiring in India. I don't know about that. So in US, they were on a hiring freeze for around 3 months. They started hiring in September. So in September, I just reached out to the recruiter, which was given by my senior, like saying that hey, this team is hiring, like hiring manager, not a recruiter, hiring recruiter. So that he just reached out and asked update on the application. So when I asked them, so they said that you're already in the pool. You shouldn't have reached out. There was no need to reach out. You're already in the pool. We consider that because a lot of people have applied. We're filtering out it's based on resume. So resume, you should have a good resume. So that's another factor when you're applying to a job. So after that, I got the online assessment in September due to the hiring freeze. There was a lot of time wasted in between. So in September, I got the OA, and after that, I gave the OA and I cleared it. So I got a mail in 8 days that I cleared the OA. But since it's big tech, things move slowly. So I got, due to some reason, I don't know the exact reasons, I got the interview scheduled almost a month later. I had a date 15 days before, but the interviews were not available, so they rescheduled it to a month later. So it like almost happened in last week of October, and then I heard back in like 8 days that hey, you got the offer. Like The interview process was really streamlined. They asked like DSA questions, and like this is something available online as well. And Amazon focused a lot on their culture, so they asked a lot of cultural questions like customer obsessions and leadership principles, what they call it. So that's something people who are applying to big tech should check out the culture of the company and find out if they fit in really, and then apply.
Okay, so DSA still is important because there are a lot of debate
Yes,
around all of that, and the people that do get jobs, because it's a way to filter out people, right? Or else there's so many people, it's gonna be really hard to.
yes, yes.
What's the level of DSA exactly? Because we've talked about some like DSA level questions in different companies, and also talked about Amazon, but that was from an internship point of view. So, like, is it tougher in the actual interview process, and what sort of like questions did you do, and when exactly did you again maybe resume DSA or start going in depth in DSA?
Uh, for entire 2024, I have done a lot of DSA. Like I used to do DSA back in my undergrad as well, but it took a break in between due to GRE and
Yeah.
TOEFL. But after
Yeah.
that, I resumed after coming here in masters. So DSA I have done almost for 1 year. That's basically just refining your problem solving skills, and I really like it, like solving like the algorithmic problems. So if so someone who doesn't enjoy it, they don't need to do it as much as I did. I've almost solved around like 650, 700 problems, which is not required at all. For something like Amazon, you like there's like this very standard, lists like Strivers HDE playlist is there, then HD sheet, and then there's Neat Code 150. Like doing any one of them, they are majorly overlapping, is
Yeah.
fine. Also, you should have some basic like development skills, like knowing Git, Linux commands, like whatever is required for a basic developer job. That's also required. They don't ask this in the interview, but
Okay.
that's like given that you know this already. They do, that's why they don't ask. And like development skills, like you should have good projects. They are relevant even for your master's admission as well as for your interviews. Like this is something, as I told earlier, it's common between the two. So have some good projects, not just like something which is very common, like to-do list or something.
Yeah.
That's not going to work in this market. You need to have something, unique, like targeted. Like I had a COVID-based project. Even that's becoming very common now. But when I applied to masters, it was a bit unique at that time. And for my Amazon resume, if I remember, I don't really have anything like out of this world, but I had decent projects. So that also helped. Like getting a filter resume filtered through the ATS is something which very matters a lot in this market, and it's really hard. Like if like as I told, a lot of companies not sponsoring, so an international student should also be prepared to apply to a lot of companies. Like when I say lot, I mean in thousands, like 1,000, 1,500 for the full time journey. If they want to get a full time, it's not easy in this market. Like apply to 50 companies and you get a call. That's not going to work in this market. You have to, like I would say 1,000 is like upper limit, but and on the lower limit you can at least expect to apply to 300, 400 companies.
Okay. And people can check about projects. I'll share the link or I'll attach it in the video, because in the last episode we did this podcast with this girl named Richa, and we really explained their projects. Her projects are also quite unique. So that is
Yes,
something that's important, because you don't want to end up making a clone or like a to-do list, as you mentioned,
yes, yes.
especially in the kind of market that you are in. So thank you so much, Sudesh, for sparing some time with me. I just want a last message for you, for the folks that are really confused right now. They're suppose in their third year, fourth year, or even they've entered the job market, but they aren't really sure about what they want to do. So what's your message for people that are aspiring to do masters, but they're sort of stuck in this thought process and they don't really have a lot of clarity about what they should do?
Okay, so if you're already made up your mind and you want to do it, as I said earlier, just wait for 2, 3 months. Let's see the new rules. If you, and also as I told earlier, let's focus on the part, where why you want to do a master's. If you have a long-term goal of, switching from F1 to H1B or something of that sorts, then wait for 2, 3 months. If not, then start applying as soon as possible. Start refining your profile, get stellar OPT, or what do you say, SOP and
Yeah,
LORs, and then just don't think about the OPT and HM situation, because if you're good, you will get some way or the other. Like there are other skill-based visas as well, which I didn't touch because that was not the
yeah,
focus of this podcast. There are like O1, EB1.
yeah,
These are
yeah,
kind of some visas which
yeah,
are like skill based, so you don't really need, not everything is luck, so don't worry about that part. If you are good, you will get some way to either stay in US or you will be successful wherever you're in the world. Then
yeah,
US is not the end of the world. So if you are confused, I would say, if you have self doubt that maybe I'll not make it in the US, give it a year or two, like work in the industry, and then you can can change like a switch internally, or you can just do a master's after 2 years as well. That 2 year experience will help you boost your profile and get into a better college or something. So if you're really confused, you can wait it out. If you're determined and just worried about the visa, don't be worried. Just come to US. You will do something or the other. Don't worry about it. And yeah, like have some financial sorting. Like coming on 100% loan, I won't recommend. Have some 10-20% personal funds as well, and then you can come.
Okay. So it was really good having you, and I think the last thing you mentioned, it was pretty important. Like look at finance, and you can wait patiently. Like
Yeah.
it's at the end, if you don't get a job in the US or you don't get a job in India, there's always something better that can happen with you as long as you're grinding. So don't be lazy.
Yes.
Actually do something, but at the end of the day, like Sudesh mentioned, you will end up somewhere if you are actually trying hard. So thank you so much, Sudesh. I'll drop
Yes.
Sudesh's LinkedIn profile down below. So if any of you have any doubts, you can feel free to reach out to Sudesh. I'll attach my links as well. You can reach out to me. If there's any issue reaching out to Sudesh, I'll get to him. And
Hmm.
yeah, so that is all for the podcast today. Hope you guys learned a lot. And do definitely give some feedback or mention some doubts in the comment section as well. We'll resolve those doubts. So yeah, thank you so much for coming.